Today we will learn login form validation using JavaScript. Let's say we have a login form with two fields. One is the username and other is the password. So we will try to validate these username and password fields. We have decided two validations for our username. One is length validation, that the username must be with minimum 8 digits or 8 characters. The second validation for the username field is that it should not contain any space. It should not contain any space. That means it should be without space. We can also add other validations in the username field as per our requirement. Let's say the second field is the password field and we want another length validation for this password field. The length should be minimum 8. We can also change this validation according to our user requirement. And the second validation is that the password must contain at least one alphabet. And the third one is that password must contain at least one digit. So we are applying these five validations to the username and password. So let's begin with the validation. Before we begin with the validation, we must have a very simple form. So let me create a very simple form in the HTML. So this is a body section, and inside the body section, I'll be creating this form. So let me write the form tag. I'm just using a form tag right now, and inside the form tag, I'll be adding two fields. One for the username, that is with the input type is equal to text, and the next is a password. This will be input type is equal to, let's say, password. So these are the two fields, and then the next is the button. This is input type is equal to, I'll be using submit type, and I'll also be adding value. Let me add the name attribute to this, will be submit, and let me add the value attribute to this to be login. Let me write login. So, so this is a very simple form. Let me save this in the .html. With the .html, let's say login.html. So I saved this with login.html. Now I'm going to open this login.html. So this is login.html. You can see it's a simple form. Let me make it a little bit more beautiful. So let me go back and use a heading. This is login form validation using JavaScript. So, and let me use it in the heading, and let me use the h2 for this. So this will be the heading, and let me put everything in the center. So I'll be using a center tag. uh, I'll be closing this center tag, and then let me put few br tags to put everything on a new line. So just putting a br tag, and now let me refresh this so you can see it's much better. Login form validation using JavaScript. You can use a lot of CSS into this and other HTML attributes to make it more beautiful. So let's continue with the validation. Currently, if I click on this login, you'll see nothing is happening. So let me go back and let me add some important attributes which I will be requiring here. Okay, so let me put this form. Let me take this form. So the one important attribute is the name. So I would like to name this. Let's say if I name my form as F1. So I'll name this form as F1. Then the next important attribute is the action attribute. So let me keep it empty right this. And the next is on submit attribute. This will handle this submit button. This will handle this submit button. When I'll submit this, what will happen? This is handled by this on submit thing. Right. Let me add few more important attributes into this input type. So I'll add a name attribute so that I will be able to identify this component input type. Let me name it to username, and let me also add a value to it with empty. Right. Let me put the same thing, the name, to let me use a pass, and value should be empty here, right? So this is we have added the name attribute to form, we have added action, we have added on submit, and then we have added a username attribute, username name attribute to the username input type, and a pass with the name. So this is some important thing which we need to do before getting into the JavaScript. So now let's talk about the JavaScript and talk about the validation thing. So for that, we'll going inside the HTML, and then we'll write the head section, because all the JavaScript code must be inside the head section. Then inside the head section, I'll be adding script, right? I'll be adding script, and then I'll specify language is equal to JavaScript. So this is the language I'll specify with the help of the language attribute here, and then I'll close this script. Now the most important thing, I need to create a function inside this. So I'll create a function, let's say validate. So I named the function validate. Remember, this thing needs to be done inside the script tab, and I'm using JavaScript. So I'll define a validate function, and then inside this validate function, I'll try to perform the validation. So for that, I need to call these components. So let me refer this component, and let me have two variables. Variable one with user, in which I'll fetch the value which will be entered by the user here using input type. So this is user. Now I'll use the document object model. So this will be document. This is the root level object. Then I'll need to refer the form name. So this is the F1. So this is the use of adding the name attribute, that we can identify this form with the name F1. So I'll be using dot F1. Then inside the dot F1, I want to access this particular component, the value of this component. This component is recognized by user name. So this is the name attribute, and we have mentioned username. Just to access this component, I'll be using this username. So let me specify username dot, and then I want the value of this component. So this will be identified with the value attribute. So I'll be using the value attribute. So this is how we can access the username entered by the user here. Just let me check whether this is working or not. So I'll be using an alert, and will try to print a hello, and then I'll try to print the user entered by the user. Let me write welcome instead of hello. Let me write welcome, just to check whether this JavaScript function is working or not, and we'll do with the validation. So let me call this function here on submit. So I'll call this function validate here, validate, and this is I'll be calling on submit. So let's see, let's go and check. I'll click on save once, then we'll go back, refresh, and let me input something, let's say ABC. Then remember, this is the name component, and I'll click on this login. So you can see the page says welcome, and then it's printing the name that is entered by the user. So JavaScript code is working. We are happy with that. Let's go back and do something more in the validations. In the same manner, we have accessed the value of the component we would also like to access the password. So I'll copy this and I'll paste and I'll make another variable with a name pass. This time I want to access this component input type password. So the name here is pass. So I'll use pass. So this is pass dot value. Let me print this password as well just to check whether this is accessible or not. So let me change and let me enter this variable pass here. So I'm just trying to print pass. Let me check once more whether this is working or not. So now let me input pwd. Okay, I entered PWD. So you can see this is PWD. That means now I'm capable of accessing both the components that is entered by the user. Now my purpose is to validate these two values. So now just to validate, let's say if pass is equal to empty or pass dot length is less than 9. So if it's something like this, I'll be using an alert to just specify the user that okay, it's let me change it. Instead of pass, this should be user first. So this is user, and instead of this I'll use user. So please input valid username. So I have specified this message to a user. I can also specify separate messages for this and even this condition. So let me check whether this is working or not. Let me go back and click on a refresh. Let's say if I input ABC and I'll click, you can say please input a valid username because it's not of the length 8. So let me check it with ABC, ABC, ABC. Now it's more than 8. So if I click on login, yes, it's not giving me the particular message. So that means the validation is working for the user. So let's go back and do the validation. So we have done this length validation, minimum 8. Now we need to go and check for the space. So we need to identify whether there is any space in this user. If there is a space, then we'll again print the message to the user. It's not a valid username. So for that, we'll be using a loop that is for I is equal to 0, I is less than user dot length, and then I plus plus. Right. And then we need to get that ch, that's a char, that will be from the user dot char at, and then we'll specify I. So this is ch. Now if this ch is a space, then we can simply mention the user, or we can log it with the help of a variable. Let's say if I type sp is equal to 0, and then I can simply say that sp is equal to 1. Right, so if this sp is equal to 1, and then outside the loop I need to check if this sp is equal to 1, and then I'll provide an alert that please input a username, please input a username without space, without space. So let me go back and check once again whether this is working or not. So let me go back, click on refresh, and let me add a space into this and then check. Okay, please input a username without a space. So it's working right now. Let me input another without a space, and yes, it's working. So we have done both the validations, one for the length and one for the space. Now let's come down to the password. This is a similar validation we had done here. So we can repeat this, and then it should at least have one alphabet and at least one digit. So let's go back and do this. So now, password, we need to access this password. So this is the first validation. This is similar to the user. So I can come down and copy this. I can just copy this into here, right? But now I need to change this from the user to pass. So this is from the user to pass. So we can see, please input a valid password. So this is the first validation. It's similar to this that particular username. Let's go and verify whether now it's working for the. Let's input a valid username, and now we don't want to enter anything and click on login. So it said, please input a valid password. Okay. So now let me input a valid username and some password. Let's say password something. So now let's click. Okay, right, it's working. So the first validation is working with the password. Now let's talk about the other two validation, at least one alphabet and at least one digit. So let's go and work for at least one alphabet and at least for one alphabet. So for that, I'll be using regular expression, and for alpha, I'll be using alpha, and then I'll be supplying one regular alpha regular expression, that is the small letters small a to z, or let me write in the capital A to Z. So I'll be supplying one regular expression for alpha, and I'll also use one more regular expression, that is for the digits, that is 0 to 9. So I'll supply 0 to 9, right? So I'm using these two regular expressions. Now let me check if pass dot match. Yes, this is the match function. So first I'll match alpha, and I'll be using, let's say, and pass dot match, and now I'll be using the second regular expression, that is digit. So if it matches at least one alphabet and at least one digit, that means the validation is successful. So let me use another indicator for that. Let's say if I write alpha digit and this is equal to 0, and if this matches alphabet as well as it matches at least one digit, then I would like to change this indicator alpha digit to 1. So if this alpha digit is 1, that means the password contains at least one alphabet and it will contain at least one digit. So now I just need to check this whether alpha digit is still 0. If I check if it is still 0, that means there is missing at least one letter or at least one digit. So I can simply print the message to the user that please enter at least one alphabet and at least one digit. So I'll just mention this message to the user that will specify that please enter at least one alphabet and at least one digit. So let's go and check this code. Let me execute this. Okay, I'm entering some alphabets, and now I'm entering only letters 4 5 4 5 4 5 4 5 4 5 4 5, and I'll click. So please enter at least one alphabet and at least one digit. So right, let me check it once more. If I input only alphabets, let's say A B A B A B A B A B A B A B A B and so on. So again, it's saying please enter at least one alphabet and at least one digit. Let me check it again, and let's say if I input both the letters as well as numbers, and then what it says, it clears, right? So this is the validation for the at least one alphabet and at least one number. Let me make it more beautiful because we need to keep all the conditions together. So let me copy all the conditions at one place. Let me copy all the conditions at one place. Let me use it here. And okay, right, let me copy this thing up, this initialization thing up. Let me keep it here up, and these are all the conditions. So this is the condition number one, where for the spaces, and let me keep it inside the curly brackets. So I am keeping my first condition inside the curly brackets. I'll show you why I'm doing this. It's just to make it a little bit better. So I'm writing return false. And then on the second condition, I'm using else. And then again, I'll be using brackets for the second condition. And then again, I'll be using return false. So this written false indicates that the validation is failing due to some condition. And then again, I'll be using else if, and then again, I'll be keeping it inside the curly bracket, and then written false, then again, curly brackets closed. And then, okay, the next condition is else if. Okay, right, let me keep this condition above because it's not the comparative condition. So I'll cut this and I'll keep this above, and now I'm coming down, and this is right. So this is the last comparative condition, and in this again I'll be using a return statement. I'll also using a return statement here, return false. So you can see else if, else if, else if. So we have and in the last I can say else. Let's say if I write some alert, successful validation. So that's how I will do it, and then I'll write return true. And even outside this, I'll write return true. Right, so I have kept all the conditions together, and with each condition failing, I'll give a message to the user and a return false. That means it's not going to change the web page. So this is another condition, it is failing and we are getting back to the web page. This is another condition failing and getting back to the web page, and similarly the last one, it's getting failure and we're getting, and if everything is good, then it's written true, and the web page can go to the server, or we can get some response from the server. So this is return true. I'll have to make a small change here as well. So we need to write return here, right? This is a returning function. Now let's go back and check whether everything is working fine or not. So let me refresh this, and let me not put anything and click on login. So I have got a message, please input a valid username. So I'll just input a valid username. Let's say if I do this and then again I click on login, then again it's asking me to input a valid username. That means I have to uh, make the length right. So this is again, I'm clicking on login. Now it's saying please input a valid password because I have not entered any password. So let me input a password with characters, alphabets only. So I'm just writing a password with alphabets only, and then it's saying please enter at least one alphabet and at least one digit. So now I need to change this and add some digit into this. So now everything is fine, I think. And then if I'll click, then it's saying successful validation. Click on OK, and now the page is changed. So that was the importance of using the return statements into the validation. So I hope you have gone through with this validation, JavaScript validation. Feel free to post your comments if there are any into the comment box. Thank you so much.